Hey Daedalor, just caught your video on faith and evidence WTF. So just wanted to give a quick response because I think you make some really good points. I'm running across the same thing with some creationists that I'm having discussions with. Um, the main argument they talk though about evidence is that we all see the same evidence. That basically evidence is anything you see around you. It's just the interpretation of that evidence that leads people to attribute things to evolution or natural methods rather than divine or supernatural intervention. And of course, the follower on that is because of presuppositions. That if you enter something with the evolutionary presupposition that evolution is true, then of course you're going to interpret the evidence to say that evolution is true. But if you counter that by entering it with a creationist presupposition that the Bible is true, then well, of course you're going to be able to interpret the evidence in a manner consistent with the Bible. But again, as we know, that begs the question. The Bible is true because it says it's true, and you have to believe it on faith. And in this case, the premise is the conclusion, and that's I think what they don't quite get is that you have to believe the conclusion before you can have that premise. You have to believe that God did it before you can start off something with the premise that God did it. I mean, if you started off the premise, maybe God did it, let's see if there's evidence for that, you're not going to find any. But if you start off with the Bible is true, the Bible is factual, and we're going to look for evidence of God, oh hey look, there's something that is able to be interpreted as evidence for God. So I think that's a really good point. I always say I run across it at the same time, and it's hard to deal with because how can you argue with that? Because people just they're stuck so much into their faith-based presuppositions, and it's not just that it's based on faith, but of course because it is Christian, it has that whole aspect of you have to believe in it. So you can get to paradise when you die and spend an eternity in heaven. And if you don't believe it, you're going to make God mad, sad, whatever, and he's going to send you to hell to be punished for all eternity for not believing in him. So yeah, there's that. And the whole children issue I think is a really important one too. I think that's a really good point, as far as people, being true Christians and true Christians never losing their faith. Because, as a child, you're not born with any religious faith. You have to be indoctrinated into one. However, there are some very interesting, cognitive mechanisms and, child psychology as far as why children, are more likely to believe in things. And there's definitely an evolutionary standpoint from that as well, too, that as a child, it makes more sense for you to just, kind of blindly believe what, your tribal elders or your parents or whomever tells you. But religion capitalizes on that by, luring kids in and family values and whatnot, and vacation Bible school, and making it fun for the kids so they can sing little Bible songs and whatnot. But it's really just kind of luring them in and capitalizing on the fact that they are more likely to believe, and that children in general are more likely to have imaginary friends, and be okay with that, and be willing to attribute things like that to the supernatural, be that magic, fairies, elves, goblins, ghosts, whatever, than adults. And I really wonder what religion would look like if it was something that you could not enter into until you were an adult. That you wouldn't be able to join a church or make those decisions until you were an adult, and that somehow it was, I'm not advocating this, but I just think it would be really interesting if people were not allowed to preach to children the same way people aren't allowed to sell tobacco to kids or advertise alcohol toward children. They obviously get around that in certain ways, but yeah, I think that kids, it's sad that it is done like that, but there are a lot of good points made too about just child psychology, and how I know Richard Dawkins talks about how you should never refer to a Christian child. You should refer to a child of Christian parents, because the kids don't know. Kids don't know any better, and chances are that if you're a child, you're going to grow up believing what the people around you believe until you have a chance to encounter other people. Which luckily we live in a world with hey, the wonders of YouTube, where we can have discussions with people from all over and get these conversations going. But I just wonder about a lot of the fundamentalist Christians I talk with, if they happen to be born a couple hundred years ago someplace else, like if they happen to even be born today, like maybe in, say, India or in China or in the Middle East, if they would still come to the same conclusions that they do, the truth of the Bible, or if they would be this adamant about defending a literal interpretation of whatever particular religious book is the prevailing religious book in their particular society. So yeah, I just figured I'd throw out my 2 cents on these things, and there you go. So good luck talking to that guy.